The agent froze his torso back, dodging a horizontal knife attack that the guard in front of him attempted. Then he crouched slightly and froze his body to the side, deflecting another cutting attack from another guard, this time to his right. A training in hand-to-hand combat with a knife. Real sharp blades were used, and the agent ignored the pain as a few grazing cuts he received. The pain did not bother him, nor did the fatigue of all the training before that test, or the hair that was stuck to his forehead, hindering his vision due to the heavy rain. He was used to the pain and ignored it. Although the rain did make the ground beneath feel somewhat uncomfortable for his balance, he just had to adapt. The guards wore full protective gear, while the agent only wore a black training suit. It was cloth versus military gear. The guards were relatively intact, despite having some of their equipment damaged by the agent's stabs. The agent dodged again, his body to the side, and quickly counterattacked. He stabbed the first guard in the rib and kicked him away, and then dodged an attack from another guard, and then encountered a punch to the stomach, followed by a stab to the back, kick to the stomach again, and an elbow to his face protected by a helmet. The equipment protected the guards, of course, and the purpose of the training was to incapacitate him, and they would already be dead if this was real combat. The agent watched as his first guard stood up and advanced towards him. A predictable vertical cutting attack. The agent dodged. The guard attacked him quickly, giving him no time to counterattack, as he spun his body around and tried to piercing blow to the agent's stomach. The agent dodged by throwing his body to the side, and soon he had dodged once more when the guard attacked him. A horizontal blow from left to right, too slow, and the agent ducked. His eyes widened and his pupils seemed to dilate a little as he saw an opening. The agent punched the guard right in front of him to the wrist, forcing him to drop the blade due to the forced blow. Without stopping, the agent then hits the guard in the stomach. A strong punch, making the guard bend over and grunt as he feels the air being expelled from his lungs. The agent then rolls over to the guard's back, kicking the knife out of the other's hand, giving him another opening wounds for his blows, and the guard tries to fight back. However, the agent hits with the left jab, followed by a right upper hook and a kick to the chest that sends the guards backwards, knocking him down. The agent then turns around and, taking advantage of the momentum for the movement, lands a strong punch to the other guard's face, breaking the front of his helmet and causing the man to stagger backwards. Behind him, another guard advances again. He attempts to right cross, which agent promptly deflects. When the guard attempts to sidekick, the agent manages to defend and prepares to counterattack. However, the guards act quickly, and turning his body, hits a springing kick to the agent's chest, who grunts and backs away a few steps. Before the agent can react, however, another guard managed to recover and attacked him with a rear kick, but the agent heard him and could see him through his peripheral vision, and could soon see the guard attack them. He did a backflip dodging blow, and moving a few steps away from the guards. The agent stood in attack position and watched the two guards right in front of him. The first one quickly approached and tried a flying roundhouse kick, to which the agent dodged as he ducked. The guard tried a right cross, which the agent once again managed to dodge. The second guard came into forward and tried to kick him in the chest, but the agent was quicker and swiftly dodged under the kick, countering a punch to the stomach. The first guard was to hit him with the punch to the face. However, the agent defended the punch with a counterattack with the knee to the stomach. Even before he retracted his leg, he turned his body slightly to the side, and taking advantage of the momentum caused by hitting the knee to the ground, he delivers a rear kick to the chest of the second guard, who had advanced to attack him. Turning to the first guard again, he lands a punch to his stomach, followed by a right cross. To finish, he jumps and lands a right leg kick to the guard's face, and then a left kick to the guard's chest and drops him, landing almost like a cat on the ground. Getting up quickly, He turns to the guard, who soon he approaches, jumps up, and attempts to a tornado kick at the agent, who deflects. Upon landing, the guard attempts spinning back kick, but misses. Without giving the agent time to counter, the guard attempts to a side kick. However, the agent blocks the blow and counters by hitting the guard's leg and knocking him to the ground. Without giving the guard time to get up, the agent moves forward and hits a strong left cross, followed by a straight punch that leaves the guard incapacitated. The agent then runs into a suitcase lying on the ground, and the rain picks up the small empty bottle. The loudspeakers of the place sounded the signal, indicating the end of the training and the victory of the agent. The guards led up from the ground, still dizzy from the blows, remove their helmets, take out their knives, and begin to move to the training equipment. Despite being protected by the equipment and even the helmets, they still had bruised faces and blood was dripping from their nose was one of them. The agent in turn put the knife in his holster and looked at the clock at the wall, a few dozen meters away, under a cover that protected from the rain. Total time, 1 minute and 47 seconds. Completion of the test 2 minutes faster than the last time. It would be almost perfect if it weren't for the blows that he had received. Sighing slightly, he walked towards the gym and glancing at the obstacle course not far from there. Waiting for him at the entrance to the doors was William. His arms was typically behind his back and sunglasses on. "Good job, Agent. Your score is on the big rise lately," William said, and the agent nodded. He never knew if those small, rare compliments were already compliments or were just part of Wesker's snobbish attitude. "Thank you, sir," the agent replied, running his hand through his hair, wiping away the excess water. "How do you feel now that you're getting closer and closer to proceeding on your own?" William asked, not out of curiosity. The agent in turn smiled and let out a nasal laugh. Someone who didn't care about anyone was asking a question of that sort ironic. "As you know, sir, training will never stop," the agent said, taking a bottle of water from the hands of the guard from the nearby and taking a sip. "I don't feel any different, if that's what you're asking, sir. The goal is always to be best and nothing else of it." He wiped away the excess water that was running down his forehead and threatening to fall to his eyes. The agent then turned and looking at William, waiting for him to say why he was there. William didn't answer for a while. He just stared at him with his arms back. "You have a mission. Hunk will be waiting for you in Mongolia. It seems that something has gone wrong. In one of the hidden laboratories of our little group, terrorists, biological weapons are loose and have already killed some people in the area," William said. "I'm starting to walk into the gym and being accompanied by the agent. Your mission is to eliminate the biological weapons, investigate the laboratory, and when you're finished, destroy it. You have 19 hours to complete the mission. More details will be given once you are in the helicopter." William stopped walking as soon as they entered a corridor that led to an area inside the facility. He looked intentionally at the agent, who did not look away. The agent's mind quickly processed the information, and a small hint of nervousness quickly passed through his chest. This time he would face the biological weapons since he arrived, and like everything up to that point, the real thing was quite different from the training. But he was good at hiding his feelings and keeping an expressive face. He, even more than anyone else, knew that biological weapons died as well as humans, and perhaps greater firepower was needed, but they all fell. So at the end, he didn't have much to worry about it. "Yes, sir," he replied, and William seemed satisfied, for he had already begun to walk away. "You have an hour at most," he said as he walked away, leaving the agent alone in his thoughts. The agent moved quickly through the deserted area. There weren't that many trees that grant him some cover, but considering the whole place was guarded by William's agency, he didn't have to worry much about. The agent climbed a small hill and took a quick look back. The sun setting gave him a beautiful view of the arid site, although his view was hampered by the 2 helicopters in the distance. Turning again, he continues on his way, being discovered by darkness that soon catches up with him. After some time, he finally reaches the meeting place with Hunk and some guards from his team. One of the guards pointed his rifle in his direction when he heard footsteps approaching, lowering his gun again when he realized it was him. The agent approached with small, calm steps, carefully observing all those guards, whom he had no contact until the moment. Though subtle, they were divided into groups. There were 4 guards on the left with submachine guns and pistols, probably a front group. On the right was another with long-range rifles with optical sighting. They were from the rear. All of them were ready to act, and Hunk with the binocular in his right hand. "Sir," the agent greeted, and Hunk nodded in response, before pulling up the sleeve of the tactical blouse and checking on the watch on his wrist. 2 minutes earlier than I expected. Great, Hunk said, waving to the group to his left and soon after to his right. Let's go. He nodded to the agent who approached and crouched down beside him. They were at the top of the hill that had a view of the laboratory a few miles from there. The agent took the binoculars when Hunk offered them and observed the situation. There was blood in front of the lab, gates and mesh railings destroyed and torn by marks that looked like claws. Ah, he remembered the claws similar to those carved into his chest. The lab went down at least 10 hours ago. Whatever infected were in there, all were killed by the guards and scientists and got inside free. Time enough to get into the main road and kill some civilians traveling there. We managed to contain and set up the quarantine area, Hunk explained it, and the agent lowered his binoculars. The area is huge. I imagine you have been able to eliminate all biological weapons, the agent said, glancing at Hunk, who just nodded in confirmation. Exactly. That's where we come in. We've already seen how you handled yourself against the infected. Impressive for someone who hadn't come into contact with something of so magnitude. I confess that we're looking forward to seeing you in action now, Hunk said, getting up. The agent looked at him and did the same without looking away. My team and I will hunt down and eliminate all the infected still around the area. You will be in charge of eliminating the infected inside the lab, and when you're done, radio us and we'll come, Hunk said, taking a small device from his rear pouch. The agent looked at the device. It was small but larger than his hand. There were 3 buttons on the side and a green screen that looked like something of a pulsing radar. Walter was able to analyze the sample you took. The lab was small, but a part of the group we're keeping eyes on. The radar can detect any infected within 30-meter radius. It will keep you from being caught by surprise. The agent picked up the radar and watched it for a few moments. Sometimes Walter's abilities were surprising. Just out of curiosity, does the government claims that you fight biological weapons have anything like this? The agent asked, placing the radar in his fanny pack. Negative. They don't know what we have. They don't even know about this incident, and we won't know until we're done. Besides, they can't just snoop around another country without authorization from the local authorities. Too much bureaucracy, he said, and they both stared at each other for a few moments. Hunk just looked at him analytically, and the agent looked back in curiosity. The mask suits you, Ghost. Without saying anything else, Hunk turned and walked away with the military rifle in his hands. The agent stood in the same place for a few moments, raising his hand and lightly touching the mask that covered his face. The mask was of black wool with a skull in front. Although surprised, he had to admit that it didn't really match. Ghost turned and ran towards the laboratory. As soon as they approached, he slowed down his speed and raised his rifle. With slow, cautious steps, he passed through the fallen gate and ran his eyes around. No sign of anything or anyone. Just blood, wrecked vehicles, and even fallen bodies in the distance. He approached the entrance to the lab, and before entering, he took the radar Hunk had handed him and activated it. No infected ahead. Ghost clenched his eyes tightly. He wasn't going to use much of that thing, although he trusted Walter's abilities. A device wasn't 100% reliable. He entered the laboratory and ran his hands through the wide corridor to the entrance. To his right was a small office-like room. There were 2 bodies inside and blood stained on the walls. Still inside the office, he ran his eyes over the devices in front of him. That was the control room. Turning around, he continues his way and down the dimly lit corridor and turns on the flashlight attached to his rifle. After passing through a few broken doors and overturned rooms, he had reached a large staircase leading to the underground. Looking over his shoulder for a few moments, he takes the radar again and observes it. This time 2 green dots appear on the radar, one at 15.2 meters and the other one at 19.4 meters. Putting the radar back in his pouch, Ghost begins to descend the steps cautiously, his finger already touching the trigger. As he descended the stairs, he focused his eyes on 2 creatures ahead, one a few meters closer than the other. The creatures were tall and stout, with their long arms and elonged fingernails. They grunted as they staggered aimlessly. Their wet grayish skin allowed the beam of flashlight and the slight movement of the light caused by the intention of 2 monsters. Ghost cocked his head to the side as the creatures turned. 2 creatures had long sharp teeth that barely fit into their mouths. The hair on their heads almost completely had fallen out, and the eyes were nothing more than 2 tiny dots of what was left of their rubbery faces. The only difference between the 2 creatures and the one farther one had a few bones sticking out of its back and hands. "Oh, how cute," Ghost muttered, moments before pulling the trigger and hitting the first infected with a hail of shots to the head. The creature tried to approach the agent. However, the consecutive shots caused it to stagger backwards and fall to the ground. The second creature proved to be relatively fast in approaching, but soon it was hit with a hail of gunfire. However, unlike the first one, this one had some kind of intelligence for it. It soon realized that this agent was aiming at its head and put its long arm in front of it to protect itself. Ghost then stopped shooting and moved forward quickly, placing the rifle on his back, grabbing his trusty knife. His movements were quick and agile. Before the monster could even lower its arm completely, Ghost attacked it, stabbing its knife into the creature's neck. The monster roared in pain and blood dripped from the wound, and the creature continued to attack Ghost with its other arm, trying to stab the agent with its broad bones. The agent was quicker and deflected, countering an attack to the kick to the side of the creature's knee, causing it to kneel down on the stricken leg. With that, Ghost stabbed the knife into the side of the creature's head twice, before grabbing his pistol and hitting just one shot to the monster's forehead, which fell backwards. The agent noticed the other creature getting up slowly from the shots. However, he didn't act immediately. His cold blue eyes just stared at the body of the monster at his feet. There was a reason why he decided to use the knife against the thing. It wasn't just to save ammo. He wanted to test himself. He remembered all well how he felt in Raccoon. The fear, the terror, and the adrenaline. Everything he had gone about it was for the sake of Claire, Sherry, and himself. But this time he didn't want to be hunted. His training as captain, Hunk had taught him that would be much more than that. He wanted the hunter. He wanted to know if he felt the same thing that he felt a year or 2 ago. A result that he didn't want to fear. He wasn't scared. He was focused and knew what he was doing. The other creature stood up, but before it could do anything, Ghost stepped forward and stabbed the knife into the center of the creature's forehead. And again, he hit a single shot with his pistol into the monster's head, which fell back motionless. He always had a little hesitation on the back of his mind about biological weapons. He had thought that maybe, somehow he would act the same way he did in Raccoon. But no, he didn't hesitate. A little doubt that still exists in the back of his mind being dissipated. Good. Putting the knife back in his stealth, he looked around. Something was odd. Although the creatures can certainly kill humans with some ease, he doubted that it was what entered the lab. Surely there were other things out there. Looking around, Ghost picking up his rifle again and moves on. As he walked through the dimly lit corridors, he looked again at the small radar in his hands. Soon he felt his body locked up as he saw that the radar was marked with an affected right where he was. His skin tingled, his eyes widened, and his pupils dilated as he could hear a low grunt from just behind him. His body acted quickly without command. He threw himself to the side and could hear the loud noise of the air being cut off by a first attack. The agent quickly stood up and pointed his rifle at the creature's head, arching his eyebrows slightly. Nothing. There was just nothing there. Confused, he began to take quick, but small steps backwards, while aiming in the same direction. He heard something. He was sure of it. Not only that, but due to the extreme low and sound of the footsteps of something heavily confirmed it. Something was there. Getting snapped a few steps from beside him. A misstep, perhaps? It didn't matter. Ghost aimed his rifle quickly towards the low noise and pulled the trigger in a single time. And as soon as he did, a roar itself made present at the exact spot. Blood dripped down from something visible, and angry red eyes watched him. "Found you," he muttered to himself, widening his eyes as the creature attacked him quickly. He could barely see the attack, and the creature was still cloaked, and it was still very close with the huge claws. That thing didn't pierce his chest. However, just before the agent could counterattack, the creature attacked again, a sharp pain with its claws from below. Ghost managed to react. However, he leaped back and hit in a kick to the creature's chin, or what appeared to be his chin, and he dodged, causing the creature to move 2 steps away and become invisible again. The agent pointed his rifle forward, and this time prepared, for the creature was bleeding. And just as he imagined, the moment of a small drop, the blood of it dripped from the bullet wound and touched the ground again. He fired in this direction where the creature would be, not taking his finger off the trigger until the creature was fully visible. A hunter, not just any other hunter, a new model. Hunters could not be camouflaged themselves to the environment, nor did it have any red eyes. This one had light spines sticking out of its back, was very big, and now it made sense that the laboratory had been destroyed. The creature roared again and advanced towards the agent, ignoring the bullets that penetrated its thick skin. The hunter was fast, and soon jumped towards Ghost, ready to pierce him with its claws. The agent threw himself forward and let himself slide along the ground, passing under the hunter, which grunted as he missed the attack. The hunter's eyes seemed to grow brighter. However, the hunter advanced towards the agent again, giving the man no time to counterattack. The hunter tried to a vertical attack with his claws but missed, and the creature then tried a horizontal slashing attack. However, the agent was deflected by throwing himself backwards. The hunter then roared and quickly throwed itself towards the wall. The agent raised his rifle again and fired, slightly surprised that the creature began to move along the wall with some ease. Some shots hit the wall due to the speed of the creature, but soon the hunter's back became red and full of holes due to the bullets that had hit. The hunter then took an impulse and jumped towards the agent. It was all very fast, and the creature seemed to be as fast as a bullet. The agent gritted his teeth slightly, and his jaw locked, and the adrenaline coursed through his veins. It was as if everything had went into slow motion. Ghost threw himself forward and let himself slide across the floor, underneath the creature, which hit the ground with extreme force and stabbed its claws into the concrete. Without giving the creature time to react, the agent acts, placing the rifle on his back and picking up the Desert Eagle. The agent turns and shoots the hunter in the head. The bullet from the .50 hit the hunter due to the extreme pressure of going for the creature's skull and hitting the wall a few feet back after completely penetrating the body of the bioweapon. The creature fell backwards, and the agent stood up, taking a deep breath before approaching the creature. That thing was big, and it could kill a group of soldiers with ease, since the rifles barely had any effect. Ghost brought his hand to his radio to contact Hunk. However, his skin shivered again, as his eyes widened slightly, and a surge of adrenaline coursed through his veins, and he could be heard another grunt from behind him. The agent turned back and tried to throw himself to the side of the great speed, and although he acted too fast for ordinary human, the other hunter was even faster, and the agent grunted in pain as he felt himself being thrown to the ground and having his shoulder bitten by the creature. The pain was almost non-existent. Allowing him to act quickly with the Desert Eagle, he throws twice at the hunter's neck, which roars in pain and moves away, becoming invisible, and the pain got up, and the agent recovered. Glancing over, he saw that the blood trickled down from his wounded shoulder, but ignored it. His radio then squeaked. "Ghost, do you copy? How's the situation over there?" Hunk's voice echoed through the empty space as he picks up his radio. The agent began walking circular fashion, looking forward towards where the hunter was supposedly cloaking up. Ghost here. I found and eliminated some infected. At the moment I'm playing hide and seek with a hunter. I am winning, by the way, he said, deciding to take a chance and put the Desert Eagle in its holster again, and then grab a flash grenade. Good, I want you to know that we found something that looks like a nest near a small stream. There is considerable amount of hunters around here. Hunters that are not yet fully evolved, but dangerous and just the same. It might just take a while for us to get to you, Hunk explained, and Ghost let out a slight nasal chuckle after feeling its back lightly bump against the wall. No problem, Captain. I guess I'll have a little more fun around here. Ghost out. The moment he turned off the radio, he threw the flash grenade forward and put his arm in front of his eyes, while the other one he picked up the Desert Eagle. The hunter, seeing that it was a prey, and closed its eyes, put itself in somewhat of an exposed position, advanced recklessly. And as soon as the creature was about to attack the agent, the flash grenade exploded. The hunter roared loudly and closed his eyes, becoming invisible once again, and staggering back from temporary blindness. The agent then acted. He advanced towards against the hunter, and placing the barrel of the Desert Eagle in the creature's mouth, pulling the trigger. The loud noise of the shot echoed through the place. The hunter's head, a part of its upper back, exploded. The creature's body fell backwards, and the agent observed the two hunters lying on the ground. Now the pain in his shoulder pulsed with the beating of his heart. He looked down at his blood-stained tactical shirt, and that would stop bleeding in a short time. He would ignore the pain, and there was no need to drink to mixture herbs. He just took some bandages to cover the wound. He was not stupid to leave that exposed. After this, he took at the radar again and looks at it. There were some creatures around, and the faster he eliminates them, the better. With the rifle in his hands, he walked through the twisted corridors, watching for only a few moments with each body he came across. Until ahead of him, he focused his eyes on what appeared to be the laboratory's test room. With cautious steps, he enters the room. The first thing he saw were the two of those humanoid creatures from before. These, however, still had some of their human features, as if the transformation was not complete. Ghost then looked what seemed to be a while at the creature's deformed face. The skin seemed to be melting, and the eyes were nothing more but two black dots. Some teeth had fallen out of its mouth, and the others were already in long fangs. Upon seeing them, the two creatures began to move to the agent. Ghost, in turn, pointed his rifle, headed towards the nearest creature, already with his finger on the trigger. However, before he could shoot, to his surprise, the creature in front of him raised its huge skeletal arm and deformed head, a long stray stake of bone in his direction. Ghost dodged it by tilting his torso to the side, as he watched as the bone stake hit the wall and fell into the floor intact. Well, that's a new trick, he muttered to himself, before turning to the two creatures. They were low. The incomplete transformation seemed to limit them with almost everything. He saw no reason to waste on bullets. Placing the rifle on his back, he takes his knife and advances towards the nearest creature, which, soon as it sees him approaching, brandishes its right arm to attack him. Ghost dodges downwards and kicks to the side of the creature's leg, making it kneel on the stricken leg. And then, the ancient stabs the knife into the side of the creature's head at least twice, and drops to the ground motionless. He does the same thing with the second creature, after dodging the bone that was thrown in his direction. Once he kills them both, he concentrates on investigating the place. That room is huge. There was a supercomputer right in front of him. All around, tables, stretchers, papers, chairs, syringes, operating tables, glass tubes with more infected and experimental animals inside, similar to what he had found in the last mission with Hunk. Some glass tubes were broken, probably from the infected who escaped. He scoured the place for a few minutes, looking for something useful, but all he found was some papers of information about the virus, its possible variants and effects. Nothing that Walter hadn't already discovered. Although some of the information was about possible variants, was a bit puzzling, so he put them at the back pouch. After scouring the place, he decides to place some C4 scattered at certain spots. However, before he does so, something catches his eye. To the right, a corridor led to the destroyed iron door. Again, he picks up his rifle and cautiously walks down the corridor to this door. His flashlight illuminated, and the claw marks on the door and surrounding the walls reminded him briefly of the licker's claws. As soon as he entered, the first thing he saw was a body of a hunter lying on the floor. The creature was clearly dead, with wounds on its back, mostly below the neck, and on its head. Next to the hunter was a man also dead, with several claw wounds that would puncture wounds on its body. Right next to him, a shotgun, with a few shell castings lying on the ground. The floor was soaked with blood from both bodies. Ghost then took 2 steps into the dark room, and that's when he heard a gasp from the inside. He quickly, with his rifle already raised, but to his surprise he found no infected. Inside a cage, like animals, there were at least 5 children, boys and girls all dressed in hospital clothes, and their hands were tied. Ghost blinked a few times watching the children, still alive, and move away to the corner of the cage when they were illuminated by the flashlight attached to the rifle. Ghost again looked at the 2 bodies in front of them, and then lit up the place. There were other cages around, destroyed cages with blood all around, probably from other subjects. Ahead he could see the body of another hunter, laying next to a severed arm that had fallen to ribs without a torso. There were other fallen shotgun shells lying around as well. It was clear that the dead man on the ground had killed 2 hunters before he himself died, as well as the others. And yet those children were still alive. The agent then approaches the cage, trying to ignore the fear clear on the children, and from his fanny pack takes off a small cutting tool, twice as small as ordinary, and cuts the lock with some force. He opens the cage from the door and crouches down, watching the children. "Let's go, you can come. I won't hurt you," he said, extending a hand towards them. It didn't seem to do much good. They didn't seem to understand him, not for long and for nothing. He didn't speak Mongolian. Shaking his head, he reaches for the knife. "Captain, do you copy?" He called over the radio, slowly approaching the nearest child, who said something that he didn't understand and cringed in fright. "Ghost, not the best time, but speak," Hunk replied, as he could hear noise of gunfire from the background. They were cleaning out the nest, probably. "I scoured the lab, but before I could spread the C4, I found some children, subjects of the experiments," he explained, cutting the restraints of the boy, who still looked frightened, took at him, slightly surprised. "Test subjects? Did they say anything?" Hunk asked, as Ghost was cutting the restraints of another boy. "Probably, yeah, but I can't speak Mongolian," Ghost replied. "All right. Do you see any syringe marks on them?" Hunk asked. As soon as Ghost cut the restraints off of one girl, she being the last, he illuminated the neck and arms of each of them. "Yes, all of them, but they don't seem to be infected," Ghost replied, moving a few steps away and standing up, waiting for the children to follow him and get out of the cage. "Get them out of here. We'll finish up as quickly and then we can check on those children. Depending, Walter will have to do some more tests and we'll send them to Terra Save. Hunk out," Hunk explained. Ghost looked around once more and signaled for the children to follow him. Clearly they were still hesitating whatever to do as they were told or not. But one by one they slowly came out of the cage, although they didn't approach him. Without saying anything, the agent just nodded for them to go down the corridor while he picked up some C4. From the inside of his pockets in his tactical vest, he takes out something similar to a spray and passes it around. It was gas. Nothing from inside the laboratory would be left, only remains. He did this with some more C4 in some areas, and as soon as he was finished, he escorted the children out of the lab. Along the way, he could see the children somewhat hesitant at the sight of dead bodies of hunters he had killed. As a way of saying that everything was all right, he walked over to the hunters' bodies and kicked them, showing that they were both indeed dead, and the children seemed to calm down, although they were walking at a very fast pace, wanting to get out of there as soon as possible. As a precaution, Ghost checked the radar one more time, allowed himself to stay further back when he saw that there were no more infected ahead. He watched the children go upstairs, somewhat apoplectic and more excited than before. Certainly, they were weak. they seemed to ignore it. A single girl stayed back. He was walking slower than the others. She seemed to be the youngest, and she was the shortest. One of the boys, equally short, came back and held her hand, helping her up the stairs. Ghost just watched this for a few moments. It was so nice to see a scene like that, despite the circumstances. It was refreshing to see one child helping another, a boy playing his part in taking care of a little girl. After looking back for a few moments, he turns and walks quickly up the stairs. Already in front of the entrance, he moves a few dozen meters away, and making sure that they were far away, he presses on the detonator. The explosion was great. The ground shook, and the fire poured out of the entrance of the laboratory like a mouth of a volcano. Fire and smoke rose into the sky, and the buzz of the explosion bothered the ears of those nearby. "Ghost here, do you copy?" the agent said to his radio, looking at the children beside him, who in turn just stared at the fire that what consumed was the left of his lab. "Yes, Ghost, we're on our way. What's the situation?" Hunk said on the other side, as Ghost turned and signaled for the children to follow him towards the spot where he had met with Hunk earlier. "Lab destroyed. Subjects are with me. We are on our way to the meeting place," Ghost said, slowly glancing over the state of the children. They were all too weak to walk quickly. "Roger dat. Hold position. We'll be there in 14 minutes tops," Hunk said. "Roger dat. Ghost out," the agent replied. After a short time of walking, they finally arrived at the meeting place. Ghost ran his eyes through around and checked the radar one more time, just to be safe. After making sure there was nothing around, he picked up his rifle and reloaded it, as well as 2 pistols, kind of an excuse to glance at the children. They were not hurt anywhere, apart from being tired and probably hungry and thirsty. He didn't have much, but it would help. As soon as they sat down, either on the ground or on a fallen log, he took out some of his military rations and tried to divide them amongst the 5 of them. The taste wasn't exactly what a child would like, but it sure would at least satisfy their hunger. After this, he took his water bottle and handed it down to one of them, who drank a few sips, and pressed the bottle to one another, until the water ran out and everyone had a few drinks. A girl who was one of the older ones stood up and approached Ghost with a bottle, who was observing the surrounding area while waiting for Hunk. Hesitantly, she touched his waist, getting his attention. She held up the empty bottle, who he took in and waved at her. The girl had said something before turning back where she was sitting, but the agent didn't understand and deduced from the form of thanks. He turned around once again and stood still, watching the fire that was taking over the front of the laboratory, looking at the radar almost every 30 seconds, and before he knew it, 2 minutes had passed. It was a short time, of course, but it wasn't long enough for them to the unimaginable thing to happen. Behind him, Ghost heard the 3 children screaming. He had heard something tear and something break the amidst screams. He widened his eyes and quickly turned around with his rifle in hand, and as he turned, he held his breath without realizing it. One of the boys had a scar on his cheek, and that was all he could recognize, minus the bones that pierced his face and back minus the grayish skin. His body seemed to dwell, and his left arm grew with frightening speed. The little girl who helped the little boy up the stairs was in a similar situation, the only difference being that the bones on his left arm pierced his flesh and tore a chunk out of the neck of the little girl he had helped. Beside him, the other children screamed, and their bodies seemed to swell. Blood came out of their mouths and eyes. Only one girl was not going through the same things, the one who handed him the bottle of water earlier. She was paralyzed with her arms clutched to her chest and terror in her eyes. One of the boys was now just a beast. A coincidence advanced towards her. Ghost realized and he saw. His mind acted fast, but his body did not. He froze, only for a moment or 2, milliseconds, but before when the bullet from his rifle pierced the boy's head, his arm had already pierced the girl's neck. For a brief moment, these images of what the sheriff came into his mind, along with the memory of Elliot at the police station. He was late, again. Anger, frustrated with himself, he raised his rifle once again next to the infected shot, doing what he was trying to do.